Once you have a location lined up, then it's time to move on to step 2. Find a target group.
A target group?
Uh-huh.
You mean victims?
Potato, potato.
We built up his story for him. Now I'm editing it.
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and meta-horror commentary. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Behind the Mask, the rise of Leslie Vernon. This 2006 horror comedy mockumentary takes note from films like Scream and New Nightmare, taking us behind the scenes of how a slasher legend is born. The film follows a wannabe serial killer named Leslie Vernon, who has allowed a documentary crew to capture the intensive steps he's taking to murder a group of teens. The crew begins to question their role the closer they get to the big night, as Leslie's diabolical plan gets closer and closer to reality. Behind the Mask was originally written by David Stevie, who recently directed the horror short film Wait For It. He got together with first-time director Scott Glosserman from films like Truth in Numbers, who was pumped about the idea since he'd recently written his college thesis about horror tropes. The two have generally done very little in the film world since Behind the Mask, which makes it all the more impressive just how well known and loved this film is. Part of that love definitely stems from the awesome cast they were able to put together. The film stars Nathan Basil from Off the Ledge as wannabe slasher Leslie Vernon, Angela Goethals from Home Alone as student documentarian Taylor Gentry, Robert frickin' Englund from A Nightmare on Elm Street as the serial killer hunter Doc Halloran, Scott Wilson from The Walking Dead as OG serial killer Eugene, and Kate Miner as final girl Kelly. There's also a few fun cameos from horror legends. I'll try to point them all out. Cinematography was handled by Jaron Present, who's gone on to shoot Rampage and Mortuary, and the score was composed by Gordy Hobb from Creation of the Gods. Most of the cast and crew consisted of student filmmakers from Oregon where the film was shot, and at times that's a little bit evident. The whole film was a low-budget affair, being shot for less than $1 million. The fantastic performances by Basil and Goethals help anchor the film, and the documentary approach helps make the budget constraints look more natural. The film's editing took 2 whole years for some reason, but the film ultimately premiered at South by Southwest in 2006. It had a small theatrical release but was primarily sent straight to video, although it was met with positive reviews from critics who found it to be clever, funny, and a really nice love letter to the slasher subgenre. It currently has a 76 and 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, as well as a 3.4 on Letterboxd, so horror fans still find things to appreciate almost 20 years later. I'll be honest right up front, I used to not be a fan of this film, but have recently come around to it in the past couple years. I still think I enjoy it a little bit less than the average slasher fan though. I'm kind of picky when it comes to horror comedies in general, and I'm especially tough on mid-2000s films and some of the corny elements that come along with those, but I really appreciate low-budget efforts and any kind of work that writers put towards turning their stories into reality. And I do enjoy the film, just to be clear. There are some really fun horror trope deconstructions and some surprisingly gory kills. Thank you so much to my patron, the Horror Movie Syllabus, for requesting Leslie Vernon for me to review. We actually discussed Leslie in an episode where we ranked overrated and underrated horror movie masks. We landed on different sides when it came to Leslie's mask, and I think it was a fun conversation. But with all that said, it's probably time we get started. Grab your sides, everybody, because we're watching Behind the Mask, the rise of Leslie Vernon. The movie opens as a masked figure watches a young waitress taking out the trash. The door slams shut and she runs away in fear, but we'll be rejoining her later. Now we meet our protagonist, Taylor Gentry, who is an aspiring journalist in grad school. She's working on a documentary that explores the history of the country's worst serial killers.
At Crystal Lake, a madman named Jason Voorhees has killed dozens over the past 3 decades.
So in this world, killers like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, and Freddy Krueger are all real, and the communities affected by them constantly live in fear.
For these residents, Halloween will never be the same.
Oh, hi Kane Otter. But Taylor isn't following these legendary killers. She is on the hunt for a new killer that is supposedly going to strike soon in Glen Echo, Maryland. 20 years ago, a boy was possessed by evil and an angry mob apparently threw him down a waterfall to his death. But it seems the forces of evil have brought him back, and the vengeful man is planning to inherit the murderous legacy of his slasher forefathers.
This man's name is Leslie Vernon.
Taylor and her cameramen Doug and Todd begin noticing strange things happening around them, and the excited soon-to-be murderer pops out to greet his guests.
Mr. Vernon!
Hey!
Leslie is definitely a weirdo.
I only keep pets I can eat.
But he's not the brooding psychopath you may expect. He's exuberant, funny, and definitely likes to perform for the camera.
Dude, why would I have a deck of cards? Check your left front pocket.
What the? Holy fucking sweet.
They sit down for an interview, with Taylor asking why he plans on killing innocent people, but Leslie only intends on explaining how he does it. It's up to them to understand the importance of it all by the end.
It's up to you.
All right.
He takes them to his old farmhouse in Glen Echo, where he plans to make his grand reappearance about a month from now. Until then, he's working hard to get into tip-top shape, as his predecessors have left quite a fitness legacy.
There's that whole thing of making it look like you're walking, and everybody else is running their asses off.
Oh, right.
And I gotta stay with them.
Yeah.
Next, he shows them how to shop for future victims. The final girl is obviously the key, but she's nothing without a great supporting cast. You need a healthy mix of athletes, sluts, stoners, and of course, one virgin girl who might just make it out alive. Leslie already has a final girl he's been watching for quite some time. Everybody meet Kelly Curtis, the waitress from the intro. He sets a strict no contact rule with Kelly, as he can't afford the crew messing up his big plan. Now we get to see the intro from Leslie's perspective, as he's been routinely scaring her to build up anxiety and paranoia before the big night. He plans on catching her attention from the shadows, at which point Taylor will pull the brick that holds the door with a clear fishing line to scare her. The plan goes off without a hitch. Now they visit Leslie's friend Eugene, who is an old pro in the killing industry. They meet his hot young wife Jamie, who tells the group he's in his sensory deprivation chamber out back. It's a helpful training exercise for killers.
Why do you do this?
It helps you control your bodily functions. In case you need to look, dead.
They dig up the old bastard and head inside for dinner, and Eugene tells Taylor what it was like in the old days. Back in the 60s and 70s, success was based off quantity and range. You were measured by how many bodies you had in how many places. Nowadays, it's all about prep work and big grand gestures. Jason, Michael, and Freddy changed the game because they kept coming back to their original locations.
Turned themselves into legends by returning like a curse over and over again. That was a radical change in philosophy.
They managed to set up home bases in what was previously a nomadic profession. Taylor is still against the whole idea of killing, but Eugene argues that he and Leslie are in the business of fear.
Every civilization from the dawn of man has had its monsters. For good to be pitted against evil, you have to have evil.
Leslie is currently workshopping who he's gonna kill leading up to the big night. It needs to be somebody that Kelly knows and will come into contact with, but it can't be a close friend. Jamie suggests killing someone who works at the library Kelly goes to. Next, Leslie needs to get a forged document in front of Kelly, which will mislead her into thinking her great uncle raped Leslie's mom. Leslie tells the group this is the point of no return. This is their last chance to back out before the killing starts. They are clearly uncomfortable, but they are in. They sneak into the library and watch as Leslie plants the fake article, and he's also planted a microfilm article that elaborates on the story. His hope is that Kelly will ask the librarian for help in finding it, they will watch it together, and that's when he'll pop out and kill the librarian. Kelly does find the headline and asks librarian Miss Collinwood, played by the incredible Zelda Rubinstein, to help find the scan of the original. She reads up on her imaginary great uncle and asks Miss Collinwood about the Vernon boy who was murdered 20 years ago.
Never you mind, it's just a story.
Legend has it that the Vernons were abusive farmers who forced their bastard son Leslie to work day and night in the fields with nothing but a hand scythe until one day when the boy revolted. On a blood-red harvest moon, he murdered his father with a scythe and hung his own mother in the apple orchard.
The incensed townspeople marched upon the farmhouse and marched him over the falls.
But if Kelly's great uncle is actually Leslie's father, that would make them cousins, I think? I don't know, I'm not a genealogist.
Turtles picked his bones clean.
Oh, now I understand the turtles. Leslie pops out to kill Collinwood, but he's interrupted by Robert Englund. Miss Collinwood drops dead, I guess, and Leslie flees while dodging bullets. Oh, turns out Leslie did get shot, but he was wearing a bulletproof vest to add to his unkillable legend. He and Eugene explain that this guy, Doc Halloran, is what they refer to as an Ahab. Basically, an Ahab is an agent of good who is aware of the killer when nobody else is and will put themselves in danger to stop them. Basically, he's Dr. Loomis. Doc Halloran, who yes is a reference to The Shining, was Leslie's psychiatrist before the drowning and always knew he'd turn evil and has become obsessed with stopping him. It's a good thing for Leslie, it means his mythos is growing. Taylor breaks the one and only rule by trying to warn Kelly, but their efforts are interrupted by Halloran. He's noticed them tailing Kelly and knows they're in cahoots with Leslie, hinting that they don't know their killer as well as they may think.
His name is Leslie Mancuso from Reno, Nevada.
They skedaddle before Kelly can ask what's going on, and Leslie has caught them in their betrayal. And he is not fucking happy.
Don't ruin my life's work.
She confronts him about what Halloran told her, and he slams her head against the van, but agrees to tell her the truth. Turns out Leslie has no relation to the Vernons. He discovered their story and decided it would make his perfect origin. Halloran was his shrink back in Reno, Nevada, and when the doc caught on to Leslie's plan, he filed a restraining order to keep him from interfering. Looks like Doc finally found his missing patient. The group debates over whether they should stay or go, but it's become pretty clear that Taylor is too invested to quit. Leslie begins prepping the farmhouse for the big night, explaining some of the ethics behind what he can and can't do.
The closet, it's symbolic of the womb. It's the safest place to be because in the womb, we're innocent.
The most important rule is nobody gets away, as it causes a lot of problems with redisappearing and is also just embarrassing. The basic plan goes something like this. Kelly and a group of friends will come to the house during the harvest moon to see if the legend is true, where they will participate in typical slasher teen behavior. His first two victims will come upstairs to Doink. He'll stage their bodies to look like they're sleeping to buy some time before the panic starts. Next, he'll cut the power and the teens will find flashlights with dead batteries and be forced to head to the basement to search for the circuit breaker. One of the jocks and his girlfriend will turn the power on, but they'll also get turned on.
Oh, Leslie, don't you think that's a little gratuitous?
Now, Taylor, who's telling the story?
Leslie will cut the power again and take out the guy, but let the girl go so she can get the panic party started. He'll place the corpse in the tool shed, which will be the eventual safe haven for the final girl, Kelly.
It's a pivotal moment when she makes the transition from victim to heroine.
This is where she'll grab a big, hard weapon to fight back with, which comes with some rich symbolic history as well.
It's deeply symbolic. She's empowering herself with cock.
Unfortunately, Leslie has already tampered with the toolshed weapons to make them effectively useless. He's eliminated as many exits from the house as possible.
Don't they just smash them out?
You'd be surprised. No.
And he's pre-cut tree branches in case anybody tries a second-story escape. The group will find the bodies upstairs and rush to the cars, but those will obviously be out of commission. Leslie will kill a stoner, the others will run to the barn to hide, but Leslie will be waiting and kill another. This will be when Halloran shows up, and Leslie will kill him and any other remaining side characters. Kelly will flee to the Yonic gates of the apple orchard, where she will undergo a spiritual change.
Her innocence lost, born again as a woman hell-bent on revenge.
She'll grab her toolshed penis and emerge ready to fight. In the end, either he or she will ultimately die via this apple press. Very nice. Eugene and Jamie wish Leslie luck before the big night, and Taylor watches as he coats his body in a special concoction that will reduce bleeding and protect from flames just to be safe. He also admits that he is in love with at least the idea of his final girl and the courage she'll hopefully find within herself. Oh, well, that's nice, I guess. We've finally gotten to Leslie's big night, and he counts 8 victims partying down below in the farmhouse. He's snagged the car's spark plugs and plans on giving the 2 horn dogs that have come upstairs a few minutes before he takes them out. Well, that's nice too, I guess. Leslie masks up and kills them off screen, and the crew no longer has any idea if they should be recording. Leslie is fucking pumped, but he realizes that the documentarians are in over their heads. He escorts them outside and advises that they leave now.
After tonight, I'll either be in hiding, locked up, or dead. We're not gonna see each other after tonight anyway. We might as well just say our goodbyes now.
Taylor tries one last time to talk Leslie out of this, but he believes this is what he was born to do. The group says goodbye and Leslie heads back to the house, but Taylor finally decides enough is enough.
We built up his story for him. Now I'm editing it.
Bye-bye found footage, hello usual disembodied camera. Taylor is determined to stop him, and she convinces the reluctant Todd and Doug to help her warn Kelly. They head inside the house and receive direction from some very well-acted stoners.
I think she went upstairs with that Shane dude.
But it seems Kelly isn't the virgin Leslie claims she is.
Oh my god!
They regroup downstairs and Taylor tries to explain what's going on just as Leslie kills the fella getting a BJ in the basement. Taylor walks through the weeks of stalking Kelly's been experiencing, and Leslie officially makes his presence known. It seems he knew plans were going to change though, as the bodies upstairs have been removed. The stoners have made their way to the tool shed to arm up, and Leslie stabs one in the neck with his scythe. The crew is too late to save the other guy, who gets his fucking heart removed with a post hole digger. I don't think I've ever seen a kill with that before. The entire group flees to Taylor's van, only to find the original horn dogs hidden inside. They rush back to the house, where Taylor decides they should hunker down to protect Kelly. They explain that because she isn't the ethical virgin he was hoping, Leslie will likely kill everyone and leave no witnesses. Kelly says fuck this and smashes a window, only to trust a pre-cut tree branch and fall to her death. With the so-called final girl dead, all of the group's plans are right out the window as well. The teens flee to the barn just like Leslie planned, and Todd decides to use himself as a distraction. Unfortunately, Todd isn't much of a track star, and Leslie quickly walks him down.
It's fucking Todd! It's Todd!
Meanwhile, Taylor has finally realized that Kelly was never the final girl. It's been her from the very start. Leslie's the one who found her and reached out. The whole reason he agreed to this documentary was so he could see her up close and personal.
It's her.
You're the virgin.
The group accidentally ambushes Halloran and knocks him out, giving Leslie the opportunity to kill this girl how he originally intended. He wraps a rope around the last jock's neck, hanging the poor kid to death. Halloran takes on Leslie next, but the completely useless Loomis knockoff is quickly taken out. Leslie also knocks out Doug and begins chasing his real final girl, who does indeed grab an axe and enter the apple orchard of Rebirth. She manages to whack Leslie with the axe, but it does break on that first swing. He Michael Myers his ass away, and Taylor makes her way to the apple pressing shed. Leslie walks right into an ambush and gets knocked down, but it isn't long before he gets the upper hand and starts strangling her. Taylor manages to reach his scythe though and stabs him in the side. She yeets his head into the press and starts twisting it downward, and Leslie takes his final moment to commend his perfect final girl.
I knew you were the one.
She douses the shed in gasoline and lights it up. She's joined by Doug and a very injured Halloran, and the three watch as the shed burns away. It's a happy ending for these three, but as the credits roll, we rejoin Leslie at the morgue. And it seems his flame retardant gel came in handy after all. And that's Behind the Mask. You know what? I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I enjoyed that more than I expected to. Maybe I'm just coming around more to meta horror in my old age, but I really enjoyed the black comedy of this. I like the film best when it's not trying to be super haha in your face funny. There are a bunch of dry ass line deliveries about brutal violence or plays on horror tropes that are really funny. There are still a bunch of low-brow, dumb comedy moments in the film, but they felt fewer and further between than the last time I watched. The film still very much feels like it came out in the mid-2000s, which in my opinion is the worst possible time capsule to be stuck in. But I have a great time whenever Leslie is working on his traps and sabotage, discussing the horror tropes and rules, and otherwise explaining this industry of slashers. Spinning the idea of being a slasher as a career path that people like Jason and Michael do professionally is really funny, and they use those films as the building blocks for a lot of clever details that happen in this film. I love the character of Eugene, he's my favorite part of the entire story. In the early drafts of the film, he was actually written to be Billy from Black Christmas. By the time the film started shooting, he was redeveloped into a horror archetype, but I still think he fills that role really well. Hearing him discuss the nomadic lifestyle of a slasher before the big 80s icons changed the game is a very fun way to look at the many one-and-done killer movies we had gotten before them, as well as a nod to the various nomadic serial killers that actually existed during that time period. I'm honestly surprised we never got a sequel to this because the world of it all feels very fresh and ready to be expanded on. A secret enterprise of serial killers that do it in big bombastic ways would be really fun to watch, especially as a sort of fly-on-the-wall character. Obviously, with all of the trademarks and IPs and everything, it would be practically impossible to ever feature those real characters that we know and love, but a boy can dream. A recent film I covered on the channel that Leslie Vernon fans may want to look into is Vicious Fun. It also treats the world of serial killers as a sort of enterprise, so it may be a fun continuation for you. But back to my original point, this film does a great job of making sense of the many actions and tropes that take place in horror movies. You can go back to films like Friday the 13th or Halloween and look for evidence of these killers tampering with the location beforehand to make sure the events play out how they want them to. My favorite meta horror film is The Cabin in the Woods, which takes this idea to an extreme. My other small complaint is around the film's final third, when we switch from found footage to the traditional omnipotent camera. There were little moments of it throughout the film, but once the full switch was made, it just became a bit more evident how low the budget was. Some of the teen acting is just atrocious, and unfortunately most of the kills don't live up to the slasher films that Leslie is trying to emulate. The post-hole digger is the only interesting kill throughout, and it mostly happens off screen. The twist that Taylor is actually the final girl is pretty obvious, but I do think the film unveils it in a very funny way. And all of Leslie's rambling about virginity, phallic and yonic symbolism, and the holy spaces of closets and the outdoors really cracked me up. So all in all, I would describe Behind the Mask as a mixed bag that is still definitely worth a watch. I still wouldn't put it on the same level as movies like Scream, New Nightmare, and The Cabin in the Woods, but I do think it holds its own confidently amongst similar horror comedies like Final Girls, Vicious Fun, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and even Sleepaway Camp 2. It does feature one of the most unique approaches to deconstructing the slasher subgenre, and it's clear through the script that there is a lot of love for that history imbued into the story. It's super clever and funny, features some really likable characters, and pays homage to the many great films that came before it. If you're into meta horror or just really love slasher films, I would definitely recommend you give it a watch. Well, that's about it. Thank you again to my patron Victor from the Horror Movie Syllabus for requesting Leslie Vernon for me to review, and be sure to check out Victor's channel as well. He does some really nice deep dives on really specific horror movie subgenres. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. But what did y'all think of Leslie Vernon? Did you like it more than me? Even less? Let me know down below. And be sure to join me in 2 weeks as we return to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise with part 2. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.